Let's go NFC first, because I feel like on this one we are starting in the same spot.
We might be. Yeah, we might be.
All right, bro. I'll go first. I'll tee it up, man. I got the Packers finishing in fourth place at 7-10, 0-6 in their division. I am done with this Jordan Love hype train. We were just talking about it. I do not understand the infatuation with his play. I do not like the way this defense has been constructed. The fact that they lost Jair Alexander is a massive hole. I think that they kind of get smacked around a little bit in this division this year. I do think the Bears improve a little bit better than the Packers. Not a lot, but a little bit. I'm really down on this Packers team. I do not believe in Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love taking that next step offensively. I just don't. Where you at? Where are you at? I mean, are you all down on the Packers as well?
Look, I'm always down on the Packers because I'm a Vikings fan, right? But I gotta keep it real. Look, I love to hear that you got him there in fourth place and not having a good year. Um, that being said, they aren't my fourth place team in the NFC North. That does end up going to the Chicago Bears. And we talked a little bit about polls earlier and how I think that they've constructed a good roster. I like the coaching staff that they have in there. That being said, I got the Bears at 6-11 this season.
Ooh.
Because I'm not sold on Caleb Williams being the answer. Bill Parcells, famous coach, really heralded coach, has a kind of Bible for the commandments of what a quarterback needs to be. 10 commandments in the NFL. Again, shout out to the O-line committee. They talked about this yesterday, the 10 commandments of quarterback. And specifically Caleb Williams, how many of those commandments does he meet? And it's tough to find a couple of them that he actually meets. I don't know that he's going to fit in with Ben Johnson's system. And at the end of the day, the quarterback is the biggest linchpin to a team, whether or not they're good or bad. And I'm not sold on what I saw from him last year. The preseason looked great, and then everything else really did not look good. I don't know that he's a leader of a team. I don't know if he's a leader of men. I don't know if he can run that Ben Johnson type of offense. I do expect there to be a boost because they do have good personnel on that team. I do expect good things from Ben Johnson. However, we've only seen him as an offensive coordinator and kind of concocting some brilliant stuff with really good players. But they were able to do that in large part because you have Jared Goff, who is a solid quarterback that can run that offense and manage that side of the ball. And I don't know that Caleb Williams can do that. I don't know that he's able to process like an NFL quarterback yet. And I think that's going to kind of be the bane of this team. And that's why the Bears, while they're going to be feisty and scrappy and better than they were last year, they're still going to end up with a 6-11 record last in the NFC North.
Okay. All right. So listen, I completely get it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into my third team. I have the Bears there at my third team at 8-9. I got them 2-4 in the division. I do think that they will be improved. Now, I do understand that there is a lot of question marks still, especially as it centers around the quarterback position. There's just so much fucking talent there now, dude, that it would be hard. I would be hard pressed to not give them at least almost a 500 record. They have improved that offensive line. They have done wonders in that defensive secondary. I think that just based on the talents on the name, maybe it's just selling me a little bit, but they have to be better than what we have seen in the past. And listen, Caleb Williams, if he can be reined in at all, has supreme physical talents, right? Like we have seen some of those supreme physical talents. So if Ben Johnson can kind of get his mind right and get under control, which is one of those things that we always thought was going to be a problem, like where is he going to fall? I think they can be much better. They're just not all the way there yet. And this is a really fucking tough division with you guys and the Lions in it. So I got them at 8-9, finishing third in the AFC North, ninth in the NFC.
All right. And that takes me to my number 3 team, which is the Green Bay Packers. I do have them going 8-9 this year. I also, of course,
So
am
we're just flip flopped on the Packers and the Bears.
Yep. And I'm not sold on Jordan Love either. Obviously, we've talked ad nauseum about his accuracy issues and whatnot. I'm not sold on LaFleur as well. I think that they have just been piss poor at drafting. They're not super active in the free agents market. That offense is obviously still going to be good with its running game, but they went out and made some kind of goofy signings in free agency this year, big money to add offensive linemen to bring in. And one of the things that they needed to do was bolster that wide receiver room. They go out in the first round and draft Matthew Golden, who I like to an extent, but I still don't. I'm not sold on him as a number 1 wide receiver either. I know there's a lot of Packer faithful who are really excited about him, and I think that at his peak potential, he could be a Stephon Diggs. But also, I think that there is still a lot of question marks coming out of Texas about his overall play and whether or not he can fit into that wide receiver 1 role, and that he might end up being more of a wide receiver 2 in this league. And if he ends up hitting that mark, he kind of floods in with a whole bunch of wide receiver 2, 3, and 4s on that team and no true number 1 wide receiver.
Reminds me very much of a Jordan Addison style type guy.
Yeah, definitely could.
Matthew Golden.
Yeah. And then on defense, their defensive front is okay. It's aging. I'm not a huge fan of the pass rush that they have. And that defensive secondary is really rough. Look, Jair Alexander, for being a kook and always being injured, like when he's on the field, he is a very solid player, and he's no longer there anymore. And they didn't do a whole lot to really bolster that secondary. I think it's going to be a huge weak point for them. Some teams can get away with having a weaker secondary, and I don't know that this Packers team is one of them because they don't have the pass rush in order to complement that weaker secondary. So I have them just under 500 at 8-9, third place in the NFC North.
All right, brother. Moving on to the second place. We may have a disagreement again, but this is where I have your boys landing. I got them at 11-6, 5-1 in the division. You sweep everybody. You split with the Lions. I think you guys are going to be good, but the fact that you have a rookie quarterback coming in his first year, I think there's going to be some growing pains at certain points. You're not going to see another 14, 15 win season. You're going to have to probably take a little bit of a step back to earth, but that team is supremely talented. The defense, well coached, and they play out of their minds in that system. All of those guys don't work everywhere in the league. With fucking B-Flow, though, that defense hums. Justin Jefferson, apparently somehow is the number 2 best receiver in the league, voted on by execs. But I got him as the number 1. He's a dog. It's just everything stems to how good is JJ McCarthy. That's everything hinges on that one question. I still think you guys are a very talented team, but there's going to be a step back from somebody who's been in the league.
All right. Yeah, and I can understand that. That's a lot of the talking points nationally, as well as the question mark on this team is what's going to happen at quarterback? What sort of production can we see? And to think that we're going to see a 14-3 year, 14 wins again like last year, is damn near impossible, regardless of who's playing quarterback. Mahomes is on the Chiefs every year, and they aren't expected to get that many wins every year. The bookies aren't setting their number, much higher than 12 every year. So it's understandable. Not to mention that the schedule this year is absolutely difficult as fuck for the NFC North. But look, this is where I get to kind of come in with my homerish kind of takes. In second place, I do have the Detroit Lions this year.
There we go.
This is what's going to hurt people is I got them at 9-8.
Ooh, what?
I got them at 9-8. They have one of, if not the most difficult schedule, in my opinion, especially out of this NFC North. Not only that, they are losing their offensive coordinator and that magic that he brought on the offense. They're losing their defensive coordinator and Aaron Glenn. That team was completely racked by injuries on the defensive side of the ball last year, which hurt them, and they still were able to overcome a lot of that. And they're getting guys like Aiden Hutchinson back. Look, this sounds bad because I think the Lions are a very good team.
You don't believe
However,
in Dan Campbell nearly as much as I do.
I love Dan Campbell. I do, but he's not the schematic mastermind. He's the motivator of a team. And I think that those coordinators provided so much to that team. But beyond that, you're playing a extremely difficult schedule. We got let's see here. They play in Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati's got a really good offense and not much of a defense, but that could be a tough game for them. Kansas City in Kansas City. They play Tampa Bay. Vikings, obviously, Commanders in Washington, Philly in Philadelphia. Rams in LA. They have a very, very difficult schedule to be going on at Baltimore early in the year. It's not going to be an easy road for them. I still think that they're a very good team. I still have them as a playoff team, making the 7th seed at 9-8. But I think that we are going to see a bit of a step back. Like that defense is better. They brought in some better personnel, but I think that the offset of losing those coaches on both sides of the ball, we're going to see less creativity and a little bit of a drop off. That coupled with an extremely difficult schedule, they get to 9-8 winning record. And maybe Detroit goes back a little bit to where they were in the past. Not that far. But I was surprised because when I do these rankings, I literally just and say win, loss, and see what it comes out to at the end.
Yeah, because if you go by team, you'll fuck your entire thing up. You have to go the entire week and say, this week they got this.
Yeah. So I was surprised too when I came with that out at the end because I expected them to have more wins. I expected them to be double digit, but I didn't get there in this one.
Wow. All right. So fuck, I'm gonna have to go all the way back.
Detroit as your first place team.
I do have Detroit as my first place team. I have Detroit finishing at 12-5. I had them same division record as you, 5-1, just one game better. You were talking about their losses, and I have very similar losses. I have them losing to, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Vikings. I think that you have some other teams in there that maybe sneak one out on them at times.
I have them splitting with Green Bay and Chicago.
Whew, I do not. While I like Chicago's progress this year, I do not think that it is enough to really start to contend with the things that are happening in that division. That division is so tough, dude.
I actually have them splitting with every team in the NFC North. And despite that, still only coming out to 9-8.
Damn. A lot of outside of the division. All right. So we're definitely off on the Lions. I got them 12-5 as my number 2 seed. However, that is tied for the 3rd best record in the NFC. That NFC East is a bitch, dude.
All righty. Well, my first place team is my Minnesota Vikings. And I have them going 12-5, taking a step back from last year, but a pretty damn good year. And let me explain.
Okay.
The weakest points on our team last year were the offensive line interior and the defensive line interior. This offseason, we went with all our cap space and we upgraded both positions big time. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly. We go out and draft a new offensive guard from Ohio State. Offensive line interior should be completely reformed. Good to go there. We get a Jordan Mason, who's going to be a perfect complement to Aaron Jones in the backfield. And Kevin O'Connell is going to have a renewed focus on the run game, which Aaron Jones put up statistically his best season ever last year at age 30, I believe. Except for he doesn't look like he's a guy that should be a full-time back now. So having Jordan Mason there to spell him, be kind of that short yardage back, and Aaron Jones is still there for the outside zone, sweeps, screens, things like that, is kind of a perfect combo there. You're also returning with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson, a fantastic trio of receivers for a young quarterback to throw to. And I'll get to JJ McCarthy here in a bit. But then on the defensive side of the ball, we already had an extremely good pass rush. And then enough can't be said about Brian Flores and the scheme that he brings and how much he was able to get out of those guys, where they've continually added pieces each and every year, and he's getting the absolute most out of them, just like Kevin O'Connell gets the most out of his guys on the offense. But then you bring in a Javon Hargrave and a Jonathan Allen to help shore up that interior of the defensive line. And those guys, while they are in the latter part of their career, and they both had down years last year due to injury, if they come back any semblance of themselves from prior to injury, those guys are both Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackles. And they don't need to play full time because we have other guys that played full time there last year who are going to be able to rotate in there and keep them fresh. And I love that opportunity that we're going to have on the defense. Something that we haven't had is true blue interior pass rush specialists on this defense. And now we got two of them. And I would bet on at least one of them hitting to their previous potential. The biggest question mark on that defensive side of the ball is the secondary. We had some aging guys in Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore that we brought in last year to play, and they actually played average as defenders in the defensive backfield last year. We don't have either of those guys this year because Mekhi Blackman's coming back from an ACL tear that he had in training camp, and the sky looks like the limit for him. Like, he looks like he could be an absolutely good cornerback in this league. I'm not going to say top 10 or anything like that. There's still a lot for this guy to prove, but in his first year as a rookie, he looked really good. You also have some guys who are question marks, like Dwight McGlothern, who was a UDFA, but showed up good last year in small spurts, and someone that I was really high on in the draft process. But we go out and take an Isaiah Rodgers, who, when he played with the Colts, was actually like a top 15 cornerback before he got the suspension, according to PFF, before he got the suspension for gambling. And then he goes to a stacked Eagles team. He ends up being a rotational third cornerback on that team and still does a fantastic job there. He was someone that Brian Flores explicitly targeted and wanted to go after for his secondary. And when Brian Flores says, "This is a guy I want," I can't help but trust it. All right. We lost Cam Bynum in the secondary, and obviously he's a big piece there. But Theo Jackson has been waiting behind him to play and has looked really good in preseasons when he's been here. And I'm kind of excited to see where he's at. But the fact that we're going to see year two of Dallas Turner coming off the edge with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, plus a boosted pass rush from the interior, we're not going to have to see Lambo packages out there where we're putting 5 defensive ends on the field and sending them. We're not going to see all these crazy blitzes. Now Brian Flores can just open his playbook up even more to crazy mad scientist shit. So on the defensive side of the ball, I'm super excited about that.
If you want any display of how good your defense is coached, Brian Flores and Van Ginkel. Van Ginkel is a replacement level, maybe bottom level, starter level in most schemes, even in an attacking style scheme like Pittsburgh had. In B-Flow's defense, though, he's ungodly. He's fantastic. I would imagine that Van Ginkel is a guy that's going to try to continue to follow B-Flow around, and B-Flow will probably have him on speed dial because getting ginked doesn't happen in a lot of systems, in most systems in the NFL right now.
Yeah. So we go from last year having a defense that is top 10 statistically, and we add pieces to the weak points on that defense. So I see the defense as being an upgrade from last year, and it was already a pretty damn good defense. On offense, we had Sam Darnold at quarterback, right? And that brings us to the quarterback conversation with JJ McCarthy. He is absolutely, essentially a rookie, despite this being his second year in the league. First year leading an NFL offense. The reports out of training camp last year was that he was edging out Sam Darnold to possibly become the week 1 starter. And then Sam Darnold goes out and puts up a career year, enough to go get him a huge contract there with Seattle. I think Sam Darnold obviously has his flaws. We got to see those definitely by the end of the year. He put up some stinkers against teams like Jacksonville. But Kevin O'Connell is one of, if not the best quarterback development coaches in the NFL right now, in my opinion. He is getting the most out of the Pastronaut, out of Nick Mullins, out of these Jags that are second, third stringers on most teams, and he's getting a lot out of them. Up until last year, Sam Darnold was considered one of the ultimate busts at quarterback, and Sam Darnold put up a MVP-ish caliber year, a phenomenal year on this offense. There's not a better situation for a young quarterback to go into last year nor this year, especially because the weakest part of our offense was that offensive line. And now you're putting JJ McCarthy in there, who was arguably better than Sam Darnold last year. It's a lot to put on his shoulders to helm this team in year one. But I think that if we see the same level of play or even a slight drop off in the passing game and an increase in the run game, that the offense will be just as good with the potential to be a hell of a lot better than it was last year. I have us losing more games this season than last year because the schedule is super difficult. But I am super fucking high on this team. I try to temper my expectations usually when it comes to the Vikings because I'm so used to them breaking my heart. But I am sold on JJ McCarthy. I am sold on this offense. I'm sold on the coaching staff that we have. I'm sold on the moves that we've made in the offseason in order to bolster our weakest points. And so, barring any sort of crazy injury setbacks, I think that we are one of the best teams in the NFC. And that's why I've got us going 12-5, which actually puts us in at the 1 seed, tied for the best record with the Rams and the Bucks
Ooh.
in the NFC.